Good morning, students of Colegio de Dagupan, School of Professional Studies. I'm Dr. Denton Nervasa Caballero, your professor this morning. My topic is all about education. What's new in the Philippine education under the so-called new normal? More than 1.5 billion students and young learners globally, it's international, it's worldwide, are being affected by school and university closures due to the coronavirus pandemic. Schools have remained closed for 2 to 3 months already, and no one knows for certain when we will come out of the lockdowns, as the pandemic shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon. In our country, our beloved Philippines, the COVID-19 crisis has affected about 27 million learners. To emphasize, I'm going to repeat it. It's 27 million learners, 1 million teachers and non-teaching staff, as well as the families of the learners. The Department of Education, being the sole agency that is in line with the basic education, that's elementary, the junior, and the high school education, recently announced that the classes for the school year 2020 to 2021 will begin on August 24, 2020. So that's basically for 2 months. In 2 months' time, the school will going to open the school year with a bang. Classes may start earlier, as we all know, but there will be no physical return to school. DepEd is now offering schools a menu of alternative learning methods that includes online learning and offline methods such as take-home readings and other activities. The disruption caused by the COVID-19 has forced the adoption of online learning in schools. But if we're going to look at it, is it really a very good platform to deliver instruction to our learners? What about those in the kindergarten, the primary level, that's grade 1, 2, 3, and 4? And what about those students who do not have still computers or laptops? Those students or learners who still don't have internet connection. Not only learners, but there are still teachers who are not connected in the internet. Well, let's see what will happen if the school year 2020-2021 begins. Teacher training is a major consideration that would require schools to readjust their budget allocation in order to respond to this emerging need. Online teaching involves a lot of preparation, and teachers now find themselves having to use tools that are not familiar with. So pretty sure there will be a big adjustments on the part of the teachers, school principals, and the learners as well. Now, what are the different learning platforms or the learning delivery modalities as mentioned by the Department of Education as part of the Learning Continuity Plan for the school year 2020-2021? Number 1, face-to-face learning. But this is subject to physical distancing and minimum health standards. But according to President Rodrigo Duterte, he announced that there will be no physical or face-to-face learning if there will be no vaccine. So for now, DepEd scrapped the idea of having classes inside the school with these learners, because few months before June, it was March, April, and May, there are so many news popping out in the Facebook. If you're going to look at it, they say that there will be a face-to-face learning, but only 50% of the students will be allowed to go to the class for one day. Then the next day, that's another set of students. And then the next day, there will be another set of students. The next day will be another set of students. And on the 5th day, parents will go to school and submit the outputs of their own respective son or daughter. So, basically, it could not be done. Because according to Duterte, we will not be having our class inside the school unless there will be a vaccine. Now, the second option or the second learning modality is known as a distance learning. It takes place between the teacher and the learners who are geographically remote from each other during the instruction. And there are 3 types of this distance learning. Number 1, the ODL. I repeat, it's ODL. So ODL stands for online distance learning. So what is this online distance learning all about? The ODL, or the online distance learning, is the use of the power of the internet. So maybe the teacher will go in to set up a classroom virtually using the Google Classroom, using the Zoom and other applications in order to deliver instructions to the learners. But there are questions that may arise in the use of the ODL, or the online distance learning. Number 1, are the teachers competent in the use of such application in delivering instruction? Number 2, are the students or the learners equipped with the skill and the knowledge and the use of the online platform? Number 3, the internet connectivity. Are we sure that we have a good signal, or if not a better signal, a good signal in our place? And then, are all the students connected in the internet? So pretty sure these problems will going to bring a lot of headache on the part of the teachers and on the part of the parents and learners as well. The second type of distance learning is known as the MDL. It's modular distance learning. So from the word itself, it's modular, from the word module. DepEd Pangasinan 2 is embarking, and I think it's not only their division, but all other divisions are already embarking on the writing of the modules from the first quarter to fourth quarter in all subject areas. In our division, this is very true. Some teachers in every district are being taught to write worksheets and modules for the students from the first quarter to the fourth quarter in all disciplines and all subjects. As to the so-called reproduction of these worksheets, it may be on the part of the school, since all schools are now given the so-called MOOE. And this is the best time to use that MOOE for the students. Number 1, there will be no use of electricity in the school, or it might be the monthly bill of the school will be decreased drastically, because the electricity will not be used by so many people in the school. Next, we have the TV or the radio-based instruction. So, according to our Secretary of Education, Madam Lenore Briones, she told the President, and according to the reports, the President was really amazed on how the learning delivery modalities will be done for the school year 2020-2021, because she mentioned during the cabinet meeting that TV and radio-based instruction will also be done. As to the manner on how this TV and radio-based instruction, let us see how it will be done later. The third one, or the third learning delivery modality, is the blended learning. So, the blended learning is the combination of the face-to-face and online distance learning, modular distance learning, and or TV-based or TV radio-based instruction. So, that number one, face-to-face delivery of instruction. Number two, that's distance learning, will be blended. So, I don't know what will happen because, as I said a while ago, President Duterte doesn't want to have a face-to-face learning. But if there will be vaccine already, pretty sure that the students will be allowed to go to school and have the face-to-face learning. Number four is the homeschooling. Homeschooling is facilitated by qualified parents. So therefore, not all parents can do this homeschooling, because only qualified parents, guardians, or tutors who have undergone relevant training and subject to regulation, policy is under review. So, only those students or only those parents who can really teach their son or daughter could apply for this homeschooling. So for a repeat, for the school year 2020-2021, there are four learning delivery modalities under the Learning Continuity Plan for the school year 2020-2021 set by the DepEd. Number one, it's face-to-face. Number two, it's the distance learning. Number three, it's the blended learning. And number four, and last but not the least, it's the home schooling. Now, according to the post on Facebook, for the non-ECQ and GCQ, or for the enhanced community quarantine and general community quarantine, the face-to-face / blended learning / homeschooling will be done. But for the provinces or the cities having under the ECQ or the enhanced community quarantine, or the GCQ or the general community quarantine, they're going to have or embark with the distance learning and the home schooling. Now, let's go to the so-called problems or issues and concerns on the new learning platforms. Number one is bridging the digital divide with offline learning methods. I repeat, bridging the digital divide with offline learning method. The biggest challenge for schools transitioning to online learning is the widening inequality of access to and usage of information and communications technology, or the ICT. Well, in the Philippines, not all learners, not even the teachers, are connected via internet. So this would be the biggest challenge for all the schools from Luzon to Mindanao. Advancements in information technology and the internet are, in fact, actually deepening the divide between the educational haves and have-nots. Many Filipino households cannot afford a stable internet connection. Some are just only using the prepaid. They're using a sort of devices like the USB. They're going to have their load, and then they're going to have their internet connection. But it only lasts for how many days, or I don't know if there's a week, depending on the load that they're going to have it on their platform. Second, even those with access to the internet experience some infrastructural gaps, including the discrepancy in internet speeds in different regions. So that will be a big problem, the internet speed, because accordingly, the Mbps of that system or the telco companies depend or vary on the monthly bill that you applied for. Now, how are we going to bridge this digital divide? Because, of course, many of our students and even the teachers still don't have the internet connection. Now, to bridge this digital divide, efforts must be devoted to developing long-distance and offline multimedia teaching modes and learning systems that can allow users to study courses using their personal computers, as well as allow faculty or teachers to track and record their learning. We will also see a mix of live broadcast, pre-recorded, and that's on demand content and educational programs on broadcast media. But unfortunately, if we're going to look at it, reality bites. Not all of us can afford to have internet connection at home. We cannot afford to spend 1,000 a month for that internet connection or more than that. Because many of our constituents, many of our fellow men are poverty-driven or poverty-sickened society. They belong to that. Only few are in the middle class or in the upper class. But many of us in the Philippines belong to that lower middle class. If you're going to look at it, when the SAP was given, there was a chaos, there was misunderstanding and everything. People forgot already the law, the social distancing or the physical distancing part, because of that money that they're going to get in their respective places. So unemployment is another factor, because many of our fellow men were not employed for the last few months, starting March 15 and until now. Many of them still do not have work. So how can they afford to have that monthly bill for their internet connection? Okay. Another thing is the speed of the internet. That is another factor in delivering online as a modality to our students. Pretty sure if there will be low speed of the internet, this scenario will happen. Good morning, class. Our lesson for today is, so that's it. Because of low internet connection. Now, how will the learning take place smoothly if there will be poor signal? So, internet signal is very important. And what about those learners or those teachers, schools that are situated in far-flung areas? So how are they going to have that online classes? Of course, technology will be there. We have the Zoom application, the Zoom meeting, Zoom conference. We have the Google Classroom. We have the Microsoft Teams, and so on. But these two factors, the internet connection, and the budget for that internet connection. So, how are we going to bridge that one? Now, DepEd is embarking on a new journey, creating worksheets and modules in different subjects to be given to the learners who opted to have that kind of modality. Next, online education at the core of every school's strategic plan. Online education will be a priority, not only as a potential source of revenue, but also acknowledged as core to every school's strategic plan for institutional resilience and academic continuity. Before the start of the lockdown, I wondered what will happen for this school year 2020-2021. And there are so many news coming out from the internet and other social media platforms that there will be no schooling for the school year 2020-21, and I was so hurt and really dismayed. On my part, on my personal opinion, I want to have a continuity of studies to these learners. Well, if they cannot have face-to-face, that's the usual thing that we do, because we were caught unaware of this pandemic. We were not born in the 1920s when that pandemic and the whole world affected also our country. But we were born 1970s, 80s, and they were born this decade. Now we were not trained. We were caught unaware on what to do because of the pandemic. So, if the school year 2020-2021 will be disrupted, it will be cut. My personal opinion, I don't want that thing to happen. Because if we cannot have face-to-face, there are still modalities of delivering instruction to our students. So, now, this should be the core of every school's strategic plan. So calling all the school heads who are part of the School of Professional Studies of Lady Dugupan, you have to embrace the new normal. You have to equip your schools with what? With internet connection. If there's only one connection in this school and there are lots of buildings, because the area might be a hectare of land, and there are so many buildings from the western part to the eastern part to the northern part and the southern part of that area, pretty sure that another building will not have connection anymore because there will be a poor signal. The worst, no signal at all. If not poor, no signal at all. So, in my point of view, there should be at least a connection of internet in every building in order for these teachers to have access in the delivery of instruction. Other schools lacking in finances will find it more viable to outsource some of its educational resources, capabilities, and processes. Some schools will depend on the learning providers to run their online programs. But, of course, as a school head, you need to look for the stakeholders. We have the local government units. You have your alumni association in your school. You have friends here and in abroad who can help you in having internet connection in all your areas. But of course, despite technological advances, there are difficulties and limitations posed by technology. And these are real challenge on the part of the teacher. when they are going to face technology inside their own classroom. However, this should not discourage or prevent any one of us teachers from using technology. We need to try every form of modality in order to deliver instruction to our students. Or else, we will be lost, and our relevance as a teacher, as a knowledge provider in this digital age, will be cut off. So therefore, even though you are on your early 20s or your early 60s, as the case may be, you need to embrace the new normal, that is the use of technology in the delivery of instruction. Now, there are 4 aspects to ease the transition to the new normal. As what I've told you a while ago, we were caught unaware on what to do because of this pandemic. We were not born in the 1920s, okay, in the 1930s, that we know all about this pandemic before. We lived today. And worst, we are now facing and embarking a new normal. And that is not new, or that is new to us, I should say. Number 1, the first aspect to ease the transition to the new normal, to have a smooth transition to the new normal. Number 1, shift of learning space. So there is a shift of learning space from the public space to a personal space. What this means is, instead of going to school or university premises to learn, learning now happens at home within our personal, our very own spaces. The transition of spaces has been happening since Web 2.0, or known as the second stage of development of the internet, mainly characterized by user-generated content on social media. Because learning can now be done through our personal devices without having to go somewhere physically. Well, based on the survey conducted, there are so many students or learners nowadays, even though they are still in the elementary, they have already their phones, their mobile phones. And they could, because of the advancement of the different applications or softwares on the phone, right? Today, they have the way to have an internet connection. Maybe they're going to have some load for that, or they can connect to the Wi-Fi. Along with that comes a shift in our social interactions from physical to virtual classes. So last year, we faced our students with physical instruction. We tap them, we can smile at them, we can point on them, but now it will be virtual. There are so many memes popping out in the internet. And there's really the reality on how it will be done. Actually, I've seen one. A certain student sitting in front of the computer. The Lola, might be the Lola because she's too old already to become a mother. The Lola has this stick. So look at it. What will happen if we're going to have our class virtually and meet these people? 30, 40, I do not know what will happen. Along with that comes, of course, that's the physical contact, now a virtual contact. We still interact with the learning community we are in. We can, of course, still exchange conversations with our colleagues, with our school heads, and with our students. There is no need to cut off from the learning community because there are avenues of learning. So from that white space before, having inside the classroom in a 5x7 or 5x8 classroom or 6x8 classroom, now we will be embarking on our own space. Second, shift of delivery. When we say shift of delivery, that is shifting the method of teaching from one size fits all to individualized and differentiated learning. In a typical class, all students will be taught the same. The teacher will go on to stand, speak to these people, to these 40 learners. We're going to have a demonstration in front of these 40 learners. There will be a role play of these students in front of the class for the other students to see. There's what we call group work, especially in mathematics and other subjects. Okay. But nowadays, I don't know how could it be done, because you are going to face your students as their teacher individually, and you're going to have forms of different types of learning. So in this case, you are not going to teach your students the same. They're going to listen to the same lecture, do the same activities in class, complete the same homework assignments. And at the end of the quarter, all the students will go on to sit for an exam and be evaluated based on questions, practical tests, or quizzes, or using rubrics. So individualized and differentiated instruction means teaching each student uniquely to meet unique needs and paces. So I'm going to emphasize that one. Teaching each student uniquely to meet unique needs and paces. So, fast learners will be fast learners, slow learners will be slow learners, and what about those who cannot read? So it's a real problem nowadays. The academic goals may remain the same for a group of students: fast learners, moderate learners, slow learners, and non-readers. But individual students can progress through the curriculum at different speeds and use different resources based on their own particular learning needs. So, if we're going to look at it, the Department of Education released the MELC and are being downloaded, that MELCs are being downloaded in every school. So, MELC stands for the most essential learning competency. And that most essential learning competency is listed from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, that will be August 24 to April 30, that's the last day of the school year 2020-2021. Should be taught or will be taught by teachers. I don't know how it will be done, but pretty sure the real struggle will be there. I, as a teacher, I do not know how it will be done actually. So I perceive that there should be real training, the need of trainings for all teachers in order to carry the task of delivering the most essential learning competencies to all students across all levels of intelligence. Some students that might be better through watching videos, while some need to read a textbook. Each student is unique in his or her own way of learning, especially now when learning takes place in personal spaces. So, some students will be having instructions online. Some will be watching videos. Some will be using worksheets. Some will be using textbooks. Some will be using this and that. That is to cater the unique needs and the spaces of these students. Accessibility varies from household to household, of course, and distribution of learning resources can be challenging to us teachers. Therefore, we can now design and should design lessons according to the individual needs of our students and give them the flexibility to master the materials accordingly. But there was an adage known as it takes a village to educate a child. So therefore, this should not be the sole responsibility of teachers to teach the students. If we're going to look at it in biblical times, the first teachers of these young people or these young children were their parents. So if in biblical times they don't have the means of the internet, they don't have computers, they don't have laptops, they don't have mobile phones, they don't have internet, they were able to do that. More so nowadays, they can do that also. Only if they're going to devote their time and make some sacrifices, really, real sacrifice, in order to augment the needs of these young learners. So there should be a connection of the school and a connection of every home. Put this together to make a successful learning. Number 3, the third factor or aspect is the transition. Shift of responsibility in the teaching and learning process. Active participation of household members is a must. There is a need since it is a home-based learning. Now that the learning takes place in personal spaces, most likely in students' homes, family members become active agents in the teaching and learning process. So to repeat, family members become active agents in the learning and teaching process. The entire household could be the lola, the lolo, the mother, the father, the sister, the cousins who are living there. They could act as learning facilitators. They could provide guidance and assistance to make the learning process pleasant for students. But there's a real question for this. How will these parents who were not able to attend schoolings? Well, it's a fact. Not all parents can read and write. Not all parents were able to finish elementary education. Not all parents were able to at least land in high school. Not all parents finished high school education. Not all parents landed tertiary education. Not all parents finished tertiary education. So, how could this be done? Struggle is real. Because how could these family members have an active participation in the teaching and learning process of the learner in the respective homes. How could you give something if you don't have? It's a natural thing. If you don't know how to read, how will you teach your son to read? If you don't know how to write, how will you teach your daughter to write? Me, how will I teach calculus to my son, if ever? How will you teach mathematics if you are not good at numbers? How will you teach English well if you're not good in English? So, the struggle is real. Although teachers can always deliver lessons and learning materials online, learning needs interaction with the physical world. When it comes to the need for references to the outside world and physical interactions, household members need to play a role. So, I repeat, household members need to play a role. Showing real-life examples, they're going to give demonstrations, or even having simple conversations. For this new normal, household members need to augment the needs of these children, and they will be part of the teaching and learning process to take it entirely. Support from household members gives students conviction that learning is an activity that is absolutely imperative. So, for a repeat, there is a need of an active participation of household members in the teaching and learning process. The last one, shift in learning evaluations from final exams to formative assessments. There is a news I've heard that DepEd will go on to release a new way of grading the pupils for the school year 2020-2021. So therefore, alternative means of evaluating learning have to be monitored in order for these pupils or learners be assessed properly. Formative assessments will be done individually because teachers or learners, I should say, are in their own respective and personal spaces. The purpose of evaluation activities now shift focus the assessment of learning. Example, grading to assessment for learning. We use the results whether the intended learning outcomes have been achieved by the learners or whether there's a need for an extra work to help them master a certain topic. So, it is very important to have a new way of assessing learners' achievement. And this is the so-called new normal. So to sum it up, the four aspects to ease the transition to the new normal is that number one, shift of learning space from a public space to personal space, from a school space to home space. Number two, the shift of delivery from the one size fits all, having a lecture to that 40 students, having a demonstration in front of the 40 students, to the individualized and differentiated learning. Number 3 is shift of responsibility in the teaching and learning process. Active participation of household members is really a must. And number 4, the shift in learning evaluations from final examinations to formative assessments. Now looking back, this COVID-19 pandemic brought us something new, something to embrace, and something to love. We will never know when will be that vaccine be available in the market. And do you think that the government can provide the 105 or 106 million Filipinos with vaccine for the COVID-19? I doubt. Maybe for those who are affluent, who are rich, even the middle class can afford it. But we all need to pray. We all need to be united in prayer that this pandemic, this COVID-19 will be soon eradicated. Hoping that vaccine will going to bring a new life for all of us. Because there were so many people who have already sacrificed their lives. So, for this moment, my dear students of Colegio de Dagupan, School of Professional Studies, please stay at home. Work from home. I know that you are excited to face this new normal, and you are all excited because you are too bored already in your own respective homes. That's why it started March 14, I think, or March 14, that Saturday, and until now, only few of us go to school. Many of us are still in their own respective homes. So I'm hoping that all of you are safe, that you're working from home, that you're praying for all of us, for the humanity, and continue embracing the new normal. This lecture, this recorded lecture, is one part of reaching you as our beloved students. Hoping that you enjoyed the topic and you learned something about education. The new Philippine education under the so-called new normal. Thank you and God bless.